You think $1,000 makes you safe? Let me ask you something. If your income stopped tomorrow, how long would that $1,000 actually last? A week? 10 days? Because here's the uncomfortable truth nobody says out loud. $1,000 doesn't protect you from financial instability. It protects you from inconvenience. And those are two very different things. The $1,000 emergency fund myth introduction. You ever have one of those weeks where everything breaks at once? Like your car makes that weird grinding noise on Monday, your phone screen cracks on Wednesday, and then Friday night you open your banking app and see a charge you definitely did not authorize. And you just sit there, staring at the number, not because it's catastrophic, not because you're bankrupt, but because you know you're on thin ice. Maybe you've got $612 in your checking account, maybe $1,487. Maybe you've worked really hard and finally hit that magical number everyone talks about, $1,000 in an emergency fund. And when you hit it, you probably felt proud, relieved, like you finally did the responsible thing, like you crossed some invisible line into adulthood. But then something small happens. A $780 car repair, a $400 medical bill, a surprise flight home, and suddenly that $1,000 doesn't feel like a fortress. It feels like a Band-Aid, and I spend way too much time thinking about stuff like this, about money rules we all accept without questioning them, about financial advice that sounds solid but quietly falls apart in real life, and about why some numbers make us feel safe even when they shouldn't. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. The $1,000 emergency fund isn't wrong, but it might be dangerously incomplete. And if you really understand why that number became popular and what it's actually meant to do, you'll stop clinging to it like a finish line and start using it like what it was always supposed to be, a starting point. So let's talk about the myth, not to shame anyone, not to say you shouldn't save $1,000, but to unpack what it really does, what it doesn't do, and what financial security actually looks like beyond that number. Because honestly, $1,000 might not be the safety net you think it is. 1. Where the $1,000 rule came from, and why it made sense. The $1,000 emergency fund didn't just appear out of nowhere. It wasn't pulled from thin air by some random finance influencer. It came from a time and a context. Years ago, personal finance advice had one huge problem. People were drowning in debt, credit cards, store cards, car loans, everything, and they had zero cash buffer, zero. So when a tire blew out or the AC died, they didn't have options. They had plastic. And the idea behind $1,000 was simple. Give people a small shield, not a castle wall, a shield. It was never meant to cover 6 months of living expenses. It wasn't designed to handle job loss. It wasn't supposed to solve major life disruptions. It was meant to stop the bleeding. Imagine you're trying to climb out of a debt hole. Every time you get a little traction, something unexpected knocks you back down. The $1,000 rule was like putting a small wooden plank over that hole so you could at least stand still. And honestly, for that purpose, it works. A $300 repair doesn't go on a credit card. A $500 medical bill doesn't turn into a 24% interest spiral. A surprise expense doesn't undo 6 months of discipline. That matters. But here's the catch. What was designed as step one slowly turned into the goal for a lot of people. And that's where the myth begins. 2, the psychological comfort of a round number. Let's be honest, there's something deeply satisfying about round numbers. $1,000 feels complete. It feels official. It feels safe. If someone told you to save $873.42, you'd laugh. But $1,000? That sounds serious. Our brains love milestones. We crave closure. We want to feel like we've done the thing. And so when you hit $1,000, your brain whispers, you're covered now. But covered for what? That's the part we rarely ask. Let me put it this way. If your monthly expenses are $2,500 and your rent alone is $1,200, what exactly is $1,000 protecting you from? It might cover one inconvenience. It will not cover instability. And yet, psychologically, it tricks you into feeling like you've built a moat around your life. That false sense of security is subtle. You don't feel reckless. You just feel finished. And financial growth stalls when we confuse checkpoints for finish lines. 3, the real risk isn't small emergencies. it's income disruption. Most people think emergencies are things like flat tires, broken appliances, urgent care visits, unexpected travel. And yes, those are emergencies. But the biggest financial emergency most adults face? Losing income, job loss, hours cut, business slowdown, health issues that affect work. That's the real storm, and $1,000 doesn't stand a chance against that. If you lose your income tomorrow and your monthly expenses are $3,000, that $1,000 buys you about 10 days of breathing room. 10. That's not a safety net. That's a pause button. And I'm not saying you need $30,000 sitting in cash immediately. That's not realistic for most people. But we need to stop pretending that $1,000 is protection against financial instability. It's protection against inconvenience. And those are not the same thing. 4. The $1,000 trap, staying there too long. Here's where it gets interesting. Some people save $1,000 and then shift all focus to investing or aggressively paying off debt. And that can be strategic, depending on the situation. But others just stay there. They hover at $1,000 for years. Every time the fund drops to $600, they refill it. But they never push it to $2,000 or $3,000 or 1 month of expenses. Why? Because the rule said $1,000. And once a rule is clear and simple, we cling to it. But simplicity can become stagnation. Financial security isn't static, it scales with your life. If your rent goes up, your emergency fund should probably scale too. If you buy a house, your emergency fund should change. If you have kids, it definitely should change. A $1,000 rule that doesn't evolve becomes a ceiling. And ceilings are dangerous when your life keeps expanding. 5. What an emergency fund is actually for. Let's redefine this. An emergency fund is not about numbers. It's about reducing dependency. Dependency on high interest debt, family bailouts, desperate financial decisions, panic. It's about buying yourself options, and options are what create calm. If your car dies and you can pay for it without borrowing, you're calm. If your hours get cut and you have 3 months of expenses saved, you're calm. If your industry slows down and you can pivot without fear, you're calm. Calm is power, and $1,000 gives you a taste of calm. But real calm, that usually requires more. 6. So, how much is enough? Here's where people expect a clean answer. Just tell me the number. I wish it were that simple. The right emergency fund depends on your monthly expenses, your income stability, your dependence, your debt load, your risk tolerance. But here's a practical framework. Stage 1, $1,000, protection from minor setbacks. Stage 2, 1 month of expenses, stability buffer. Stage 3, 3 to 6 months, true income protection. Notice how $1,000 is just the beginning? It's not the myth because it's wrong. It's the myth because people stop there. 7, the deeper shift, from surviving to stabilizing. There's something subtle that happens when your emergency fund grows beyond $1,000. Your posture changes. You're less reactive, less panicked, less desperate. You negotiate differently. You consider opportunities more confidently. You sleep better because you're no longer one inconvenience away from chaos. That's not about wealth. That's about breathing room, and breathing room changes behavior. Conclusion. So is the $1,000 emergency fund a bad idea? No, it's a brilliant starting line, but it's not a finish line. It's not protection from instability. It's not long-term security. It's step 1. And if you've hit it, be proud. Seriously, but don't camp there. Because financial peace doesn't come from a round number. It comes from resilience, from knowing that if life wobbles, and it will, you don't wobble with it. And maybe you're at $200 right now, maybe $1,000, maybe $4,000. Wherever you are, the goal isn't to chase a rule. It's to build stability that matches your real life. Because the myth isn't that $1,000 is useless. The myth is that it's enough. And once you see that, you stop aiming for survival. You start building security, quietly, steadily, on purpose. So no, $1,000 isn't useless. It's powerful. But it was never meant to be your destination. It was meant to be your first step. Because real financial peace doesn't come from hitting a round number. It comes from knowing that when life shakes, you don't. And the moment you stop aiming for survival, that's the moment you start building security.